Yeah, this is rFactor 1, released back in 2005 by ImageSpace Incorporated. This sim changed so much in sim racing. Undoubtedly, everyone watching this video has heard of rFactor, maybe most recently with rFactor 2, but before rFactor 2 existed, there was rFactor 1. Known for its hyper-modability, rFactor was really the base of an entire generation of sims, a sim that let you create and drive and race any kind of car on any kind of track. It's remembered very fondly, and it came seemingly out of nowhere. ImageSpace Incorporated had the EA Sports license to Formula One, I believe from 2000 through 2002, and so they created F1 2000, F1 2001, F1 2002, and then of course in 2003 released the F1 Challenge 99-02, which was kind of all of those games brought together, and that was one of the top sims of the time. That, alongside of Papyrus's NASCAR 2003 and Grand Prix Legends, GTR, these were all the sims that folks were playing in the early 2000s. And so when this came out in 2005, it was a totally new thing. This was one of the first sims that I remember that wasn't featuring a top-level motorsport. This was not the Formula One game, or the IndyCar game, or the NASCAR game, or even the high-level GT sports car game. But this was one of the first sims that had what I would think of as the non-idealistic type of motorsport. It had street cars and formula training cars. It also had the high-end sports cars and GT cars and everything, but it was one of the first sims that I remember that had kind of regular race cars in it. And so it was exciting to go out and it not be, you racing in the NASCAR Cup Series or you racing in Formula One suddenly. You were out driving a street car or a training car, and it was cool to feel that in a real sim. Now, I'm sure 90% of folks that downloaded rFactor back in the day instantly went and downloaded a bunch of tracks and mods and started racing on all kinds of cool content that was out there. But rFactor itself did ship with some default content, and I might have been in the minority that originally played this content for probably the first couple months that I owned rFactor before I knew that there was a lot of this stuff out there. I got this pretty much right after release, and so for the first few months at least, there wasn't a lot of other things out there, and I remember quite fondly the stock racing content that came with the game. At some point, I want to do some videos on the great mods and things that came out for rFactor, because that's obviously where the sim was focused and what everybody remembers, but I thought for an evening it would be kind of fun to look back at the stock content and really the stock game that came as rFactor back in 2005, 2006, since I definitely experienced this early on and I haven't seen a lot out there online that shows it off. So I've made my own retro version of rFactor. This is the version of rFactor that's on Steam today, so it's the modern version with all the updates, and you can go out there and buy it, I think for about $25 right now when it's not on sale. It's a great sim to go put a bunch of mods into, but I've gone ahead and actually removed and changed the content to be what it was like on its launch back in 2005, 2006, and I thought it'd be fun to take a look at it. And so the sim itself came with two racing series to start. You've got the SR Grand Prix, which is more of your street and sports car type series, and then you have the open wheel divisions as well. And for the SR Grand Prix, I thought it's pretty interesting. This is one of the default cars, the Hammer vehicle. Looks a lot like a modern Mustang, or a Mustang of 2005 or so. We also got the Valline car, 2005-2006 version. This is a tiny little car. Fun one to drive though. Starts off like the street version. I think he also had a couple more. Yeah, the Cody, which if I remember right was almost like a Skoda type car, which we did not have in the United States, but I learned much later. Looks a lot like a Skoda. And then the H6 as well, Houston, which looks like another type of Mustang type vehicle as well. But all of these are the cars that start with, and you might notice you've got the lock here on it, and so you actually had to buy in the game these different cars. This wasn't real money or anything, but you can see up top here I have 530 credits. I think I've done one or two little races or practices, so that's a little bit more than you'd start with. But in order to race this Houston, you actually had to get 71,900 credits. And that was one of the criticisms I know, and the cheat code to get unlimited cash was one of those things that was passed around quite a bit. I know myself even back then had done the code as well. But in addition to the different cars and buying them, you obviously started out with a few cars. The main thing though was this upgrade system. So you could buy different upgrades for all of the cars, and I think this was underutilized for later rFactor mods. Some of the mods definitely used it. I know some of the F1 mods out there used it to change between race variants, but was not used as extensively for most mods as I saw in the default content. And the idea with this was really kind of a Gran Turismo-esque upgrade system. You can see here the list of all the different things that you can change on the car. If I want to put a spoiler on the back of my Mustang here, I can put a GT spoiler, which is a nice wing, or an adjustable spoiler, which is a bigger wing. And each of these cost money, and they actually change the performance of the car. So the idea was you would go race, do well in the race, win money, come and buy some upgrades for your car, and make adjustments. And you can adjust everything from the spoilers to the actual cockpit, front and rear end. What do we got here on the front end? A GT front clip, to put a big splitter, and some huge grill fans in the car. Remember, this is the era of like pimp my ride, so this stuff was all the rage. Put a hood scoop on, carbon fiber hood, bigger exhausts. I don't know if you can actually see these. Oh, you can see some pipes come out. So it was a lot of fun. I remember playing with this a ton and thinking it was so cool that you could upgrade a car itself and have it visually change and the performance actually change. And it added this whole dynamic to rFactor that I hadn't seen. I don't think a lot of folks had seen in a lot of sims. Now remember, Image Space Incorporated had made Sportscar GT, which had this kind of upgrade system in it. I took a look at Sportscar GT a couple months ago, and I've been meaning to get back to it a little bit. But this is kind of a further evolution of that, and something they weren't really able to do with the Formula One game, since for simulating Formula One, you're kind of bound to what you're doing. So when they had free reign for their own vehicles, they added all this cool stuff. So really cool upgrade system, something that I think was overlooked, like I said, by a lot of the mod developers, at least initially. And everybody back in the day just got a cheat code to unlock everything because they wanted to race everything right away. But if you actually play through the progression of this, it can be pretty fun and a little rewarding to actually come and unlock all the different parts for your car. So on the other side of things, you had the open wheel challenge, and we're looking here at the rFactor trainer. This is a couple years before iRacing came out, so this was kind of a Skip Barber, very much modeled after Skip Barber, training car, and I thought that was so cool at the time that you could race in a training car. Got a lot of miles in this one. rFactor as well also featured this pseudo Formula One car, very much of the era, with groove tires and everything, but a very slick looking fake Formula One car. And this was the one you definitely had to aspire to because it was 2 million credits, which would take an awful lot of racing to get done. For example, I've done a couple races just to prepare for this, and I only have 14,000 credits. So to get 2 million, you'd have to do a lot of racing. But the Academy Racer is where I spent a lot of time, and a lot of folks raced this car initially as well online. I remember all the servers that were popped up for this car. And this one actually had some upgrades as well. You had a couple dashboard configurations. Then you also had the difference between the standard racer that you have here with grooves, street tires, and everything, and I think a little bit lower horsepower, or the advanced version, which you had to unlock, which I actually can right now for 1,500, but slick tires and a little more horsepower, so the car's a bit faster. But this was endless fun back in 2005, 2006. So the cars themselves were a pretty diverse set of vehicles. The tracks were also, I think, equally as interesting. If we take a look in the race weekend, it started off with 5 different tracks, and they were all fictional, although at the time, I would honestly say I didn't know for sure that all the tracks were fictional. I definitely had not heard of any of them, and it turns out they are absolutely all fictional. But I thought the Mills Metropark or Toban Raceway Park might actually have been real tracks out there that I hadn't heard of. 2005, of course, the internet existed, but it wasn't quite as good as it is today, so there was a chance that some of this stuff was real, or at least myself at the time thought it was. But you did start out with 5 tracks. You actually had 2 ovals. The Joesville Speedway was a little short oval, which was funny because NASCARs weren't something that were released in rFactor until much later, one of the patches a couple years after it was released. But you did have the Joesville, a little under a half-mile speedway, and also the Orchard Lake Speedway, which had this rFactor 400 layout, a lot like a Chicagoland or a Kansas, Kentucky type layout, but then also the Orchard Lake Grand Prix, which is more of a road course, roval layout. It's actually a pretty fun track to race on as well. What I remember the most were the Mills Metropark and Toban Raceways. The Mills Metropark is just a good classic road course. Each road course or each track actually has separate layouts, which was new for these sims. Was one of the enhancements actually that ISI put into rFactor 1, the ability to have more than one track layout per track. And so there were a sprint race and long race layouts, reverse layouts, a lot of fun to be had on the same tracks. Actually gets a lot of mileage out of only 5 tracks. You've got something like 15 different layouts, I think, total. Toban Raceway itself was a little bit longer of a track, a lot of elevation change, a fun one, many hours racing online. And lastly, you had the Sardian Heights Street Circuit, which is a tight street track. Again, one of those that I thought might be real, but definitely isn't in retrospect. So I want to do a few races, and I thought we could do one of the built-in seasons for the Academy Racer, race through a few of the races and check out a few of the tracks. So it's going to be a 3-race season. We'll start off with the Mills Metropark short layout. Alright, so here at the back of the grid, no qualifying, no practice, 5 laps, we'll just see how well I can do. Lights are lit, out, we're underway. A little bit of wheel spin off the line. We'll try to get the acceleration down to the first corner, side by side. 3 wide, I think, on the outside. Ooh, getting squeezed there. Tapping the suspension. Flying to the first corner, try to get back on the accelerator. Here we go. Accelerate out of it, up a hill. This is the sprint layout, of course, so it's the short course, but still a lot of fun. Come over the top of the hill, clanking suspension once again. Come down to the bottom of the hill. This was the tricky corner as I get a little loose on entry. Just roll it around the outside. Nowhere really to go right now, but back on the accelerator, try to get a run down the straightaway. Into Dive Bomb City here at the end. This is where everybody would dive bomb. I'll try to do the same on the car in front, down to second gear. Stick it on the inside though. Come through some of the S's. Up to 4th gear. I think I passed just about half the cars, 12 cars in the race. Not a super long field, but it's how many of the school car there are by default. But come across the line. So first lap of 5. Man, this does feel so good for a sim from 2005. And I know there were updates that I'm taking advantage of now that weren't exactly in place for 2005. But I remember it being about this good. And I have a much nicer wheel now. This works flawlessly with the Fanatec CSL. But the force feedback and everything, the driving itself feels very modern. It's not far off any of the other major sims from today. Ooh, a little bit of oversteer there coming onto the straightaway. Able to catch it though. And like with everything, there were a lot of mods for force feedback and the physics themselves. Let's see if I can throw it up the inside again. Right on the curbs, a lot of bouncing everywhere. I remember how much the car moved was quite shocking to me when I first got this, compared to something like Grand Prix Legends or NASCAR 2003, where all the circuits are butter smooth. Even F1 Challenge, the tracks are very smooth, you know, being Formula 1 tracks in that, I guess. But the detail in the track surface and the suspension and everything in this was kind of a whole new level. So it definitely felt much more realistic. It absolutely was more realistic. Keep it in 4th here around the top of the hill. I remember many a crash coming down here to this hairpin. It's a tricky corner to race online with a lot of inexperienced guys. This was the first sim I really raced online in, just because it was so easy, and that was rFactor's whole thing. To connect online, create, join, connect, what was it? Come down to 3rd gear. But it was very easy to go on and join servers. It's happy to see that you can actually still do it. There's a bunch of servers still up that you can join. All of them modded now, but back in 2005, 2006, there was a lot of stock content being used. Even when the mods started coming out too, these were still some of the most popular tracks. I remember racing one of the Renault cars around this exact layout of this circuit. Race after race after race, just over and over again. Try to gain a little speed. I've stalled out here in my pursuit towards the front of the grid. I got the AI on about 110%, so they're quite quick. Trying to back up that corner, get a little bit of a run out of it. I got a car right behind me as well. We're in 5th position on the 4th lap. Ooh, down to 2nd gear, get some sparks from the car in front. Get it up to 4th gear, flat out through these S's into the final corner. Ooh, the car in front spinning out. Wow. talk about dynamic AI. They're actually very well behaved here, and that cannot be true, or it's definitely not true for all the different mods that are out there, but they definitely have the stock content optimized well. Very enjoyable to race against as AI, but we'll come to the top of the hill, see if we can get around a couple more cars. We're almost on the podium here. Final lap. Diving up the inside, down to second gear. Try not to let them undercut us. Over-under coming out of the corner, but on the back straightaway. Come down into the hairpin here at the end of the left-hander. We'll overcook it a little bit, but up to second. There we go, got second place. I think we're just gonna come up short behind the leader. Come around, see if I can carry a lot of speed through the final corner. No, I'm gonna run a little bit wide. But from worst to second, not too bad over 5 laps of the Mills Metropark short. This was such a cool track. I think it's still a great track. I think somebody might have converted it to some of the newer sims, so maybe one I'll go hunt to download, but let's go do the second race. All right, and so for race number 2 of the open wheel series, oddly enough, will be at Joesville Speedway, which is an interesting type place to be. But for those of you not aware, in the United States, some of the latter series do race on the ovals. They race specifically at Indianapolis Raceway Park. So it's not extremely odd for a Formula car like this to be racing on an oval, but we'll check it out anyway. It should be interesting. All right, so we got 5 laps, and this one's going to be over before you know it. But we do have a rolling start, which is very cool. I can't remember if rolling starts were implemented from the very start of rFactor, or if they were added with the NASCAR update a couple years after. But either way, cool to have a sim that can do both. I know most of the G-Motor games can these days. We'll come around turns 3, 4. Green flag is out. Ooh, understeer a little bit there. I didn't get a setup dialed in or anything. No practice. So I'll see in 5 laps, which will be the shortest race, if I can get up towards the front, swing it around the outside. Oh, I got touched from behind just a little bit. We'll use that high line. Oh, they all slide out a little bit wide. See if I can take the low line coming through turn 4. Come over the line. Back into turn 1, 2, right against the yellow line. The detail around this track, so I'll just pass all these guys on the low side. Not too hard in the back here. But the detail on this track, all the signs and the crowd, love how the crowd doesn't actually fill up all the stands as it probably would be at a race like this. Just the realism in this, even if you compare it to a stock NASCAR 2003 track, this is so much more detailed in the road surface than anything. And rFactor, the base of it, the G-Motor engine, went on to power the ARCA sim racing, oval sim, and countless NASCAR type mods. So it was actually a pretty good sim for it. Definitely not with the AI always, but certainly racing online. But catching this lead group of cars, let's see if I can win the second race. There's only 3 races in this championship, so definitely have to perform here. We've got the opportunity. Oh, it's on the last lap already. Come around the outside. Try to get a run on the back straightaway. It's going to be close. Try to dive it in. Keep up the speed. See if I can cut them on the low side coming out of turn 4. They fade out wide. Oh, here we come underneath second place. Oh, we just grab it. No. I finished in 3rd there, so not quite good enough. Still getting on the podium, but it's going to depend on who finished up front. All right, so taking a look real quick at the point standings, I'm with 14 points in the lead ahead of Brandon Timms and Vic Roken, tied with Cliff Timms. Oh, Brandon and Cliff there. So up front with 14 points. So just the consistency, I guess, is paying off. We got 1 race left to go. And it looks like that last race is going to be at Toban, the other equally as popular track as the Mills back in the day. All right, so at the back of the grid, 5 laps here as well, of course. And it should be possible to win the championship as long as I finish up front. Lights are green, away we go. Try not to spin the tires too much, getting off the line, up to second, up to 3rd gear. Oh, we got a car coming up the inside as well. We'll head up the hill to back out of it a little bit. Gonna get squeezed there in the middle if I don't. But all the way right at the back of the pack. Just let things sort themselves up a little bit. Ride the line there on the inside. Come over the top of the hill. Always remember there being crashes up here with cars spun out everywhere. Down to second gear, ride it on the curb on the right side. Ooh, these two in front touch a little bit. Oh, I got a car right to the left side there. He takes the line. Oh, and he touches me off the track. Pushes me right off the track. Quite aggressive AI. We'll come to the bottom of the hill. It's a pretty challenging corner as well. The track dips away. Slide it on in. Take that position back. That's right. And come through a tricky kink in a faster car. It's not too bad in this one. Oh, a car in front spins out. We almost collide. Just narrowly avoid them. Grab a lot of the curbs here through the final corners. Hit the cones. That was another thing. Just a long list of things. You could actually hit the cones and they would fly places. The track had 3D grass. I remember cranking up the graphics on this and being in awe of how good it looked, and it ran at like 5 frames per second. Definitely would have to crank them back down for racing, but it's hard to imagine this was such a great looking game back in 2005, 2006. Might just be nostalgia, but I still feel like it looks pretty good. Definitely a lot of detail. Alright, come to the top of the hill. So, gained a few spots on the first lap, but everybody's definitely fighting here. Oh, we got a car off in front. It's rejoining. Everybody checks up, try to take advantage of it. Sneak past a couple of them. No space to keep going. Squeeze this guy behind me out. Car on the right then, on the left. Come into the right-hander. All right, there we go, down to third gear. Come through the kink. Ooh, the car in front almost spinning out as well as that last one did. Try to take advantage of him into the last corner. There we go. I remember later on in rFactor actually downloading, there were some high quality texture updates for these tracks too that made them look even better than this at the time, added real advertisements and things. It was definitely a well-loved sim. Come through the first corner, still in fifth gear, just let off the throttle. We're gonna understeer. Definitely need to work on the setup to tune that out. Down to third gear, lock up the right front. Oh, I got a car coming under me. Takes advantage of my mistake. He pulls away too down the hill. Might have the car working a little bit better. I'm running absolutely the stock setups and everything right now. Come back through the kink. Oh, he's gonna spin himself out as well. Seems like the AI has trouble through there. But it'll leave me a little bit of an advantage. We'll really take the track through the kink. Through the line. I just have a couple laps left. The lap counter was always odd to me that it only counts the laps that you've completed. So we'll come to complete the third lap, start the fourth lap. Usually shows the lap that you're on, but rFactor like to do things differently. Oh, car in front runs a little bit wide. Got this guy on my tail too, looking to take advantage of me. I try not to botch this corner this time. Down to third gear, get somewhat of an apex, still slightly wide, get back on the throttle to head down the hill. Oh, we got a car, slow car in front again. Take him around the outside. Knew he was going to choose that inside line. So got around one more. I think it might be up to third, maybe. So back on the podium. With second, first, no, in fourth, I think. There we go, fourth right at the bottom of the screen, of course. Come past the car, though, grab that third place. Oh, gonna run a bit wide, understeer. Grab the last cone that was left there. We'll get on the front straight away. We'll get the one lap to go this time. So one more lap to go, second and first right in front. Got a car right behind me for fourth. Just understeering the whole way up, plowing with the front end. Down to third gear. Missed the apex one final time. able to keep my speed up though and stay in front of that car behind me. Take a good line through here. It should be flat if you get the line right through the S's. Up to 5th gear. Right down to 3rd. Just grab the inside. I don't think I'm going to be able to get to the cars in front, but hopefully, depending on how the finish order is, 3rd place is good enough for that championship win. The championship I've always gone after, the coveted rFactor School Introductory Championship. We'll come to the line, gaining on the front 2 just a little bit. A few more laps, I'd definitely get there. Up to 5th gear, come across the line, checkered flag. All right, so there it is, the coveted first place in the championship, the rFactor Academy Racer. I know everybody watching is very jealous of that, but it's a lot of fun to throw those cars around. Honestly, almost as much fun as it was back in 2005. So I got some fond memories as well for racing some of these street cars. So I thought I'd take out the old Cody here and show off a couple of the other tracks that we didn't get to race on. So we'll go to Orchard Lake, which the oval itself is a lot of fun, but not for these cars. The Orchard Lake Grand Prix circuit, though, was a fun one that always popped up online, and I always had some success at. All right, so here we are at Orchard Lake. 20 cars in this one, 5 laps around the circuit. Lights up. Out, away we go. Try to get a good run. Much different driving experience in this car than the light Formula cars. We'll accelerate away though. In our Cody production car, up to 4th gear, come down off the oval into the infield. Slow it down for the first corner. I'm gonna get blocked in here. I got a car on my left side as well. See if I can take the long way around. Maybe not. Up to 3rd gear. We'll try to outbrake these guys to the ultra inside line. To go a little elbows out in this car. It's a bit like touring car racing, I guess. Just take advantage of all of them coming into the corners. They're trying to take the proper racing line. All right, accelerate away. And for the stock car, it does have a good amount of horsepower. Oh, onto the grass over the top of the hill. Keep my foot in it, no worries. Floated around the long right-hander. But definitely a really soft suspension. But it was neat to see how much the car rocked side to side like this. Got a yellow flag for something. All right, we'll come down though. Oh, we got a car off to the right there, hidden in the shadows. Come through this long left-hander and get good acceleration out of here. Get back on the oval. I always liked this track a lot. It was on a lot of the same servers as Toban and the Mills, and when we'd get to it, half of the server would leave for whatever reason. They didn't like racing here, but I always liked racing here. Maybe it was the oval, I'm not sure. But flat out now, 5th gear, get this car behind me, gaining on me. We'll block the low side through the tri-oval. Take that ultra low lap NASCAR line, come across the line. Oh, he's still there, following me too. Drift it. Oh, back onto the road course, try not to overrun the first corner. Down to 2nd gear, find some kind of apex on the curb. As long as you touch the curb, you're good there. All right, we'll gain up on these 2 guys, and I think it's all the Cody cars in the back here, so that doesn't bode well. It is a multi-class production car race, but the other cars might be quicker than this one. I don't think I ever raced these cars online. I think by the time I had started rFactor, everybody had moved on to some mods for more of sports cars, but definitely raced the trainers online quite a bit. And raced these offline when I first got the sim. Trying to get the different upgrades to make the car better. I remember figuring out I could just race at the Joesville Oval over and over and over again and collect enough credits before I learned there were cheats for it. But come through the long left-hander. Kept it in 3rd that time. I don't know if that's quite as good to accelerate out on. across the line, though, to complete the second lap, so everybody's getting strung out a bit. Hopefully this doesn't turn into a race of no excitement. Down to second gear, though. Still made it for the first turn somehow. Going back through older sims, though, this definitely was, or is one of the first ones when I booted up and get everything set up that still feels pretty new, pretty recent. And they've definitely done a lot of work under the hood in rFactor between F1 Challenge and rFactor just to increase the fidelity. I don't know the exact changes to the physics model, but I know it was touted just at how accurate the simulation was. And of course, rFactor was the base for many professional sims, still is, I believe. There's a professional version of rFactor, which is very much the same core product as this, but obviously with maybe a little more fidelity going on. But it changed everything. Just the idea that something could be so moddable, it was built to be moddable. You're expected to go and download cars and tracks, and you could easily race them online. It absolutely changed everything. In the slipstream this time, but I don't quite have as much pull, it seems, as the cars in front. See if I can close up on them. I feel like I do in the first corner quite a bit. Take that low line across the line. Get the rear end really out there. Now I'm just showing off a little bit. Oh, right on the back bumper, though. Get onto the right side of him. If I'm not going to win the race, I might as well at least finish the best out of my car class. You know, another thing, too, in rFactor, you can have full day and night cycles, which wasn't really anything. Maybe GTR had that before this. I know Sportscar GT had day and night, but I don't remember the transitions as much. But definitely rFactor, that was one of the things folks love to do races on. 10 times, 15 times time progression, so you get the transition during a short race. It's a lot of fun to do. Especially in a car like this, you do a big enduro around a track like this. Oh, side by side onto the oval. I slid out wide a little bit there. It's going to come by on the low side. It's much more acceleration than I do. Get right in the slipstream. Scrubbing off a little speed through the left-hander there. All right, one more lap to go. So I can get by at least this one car. We'll float it in to the infield, getting a little bit loose, up on the curb, dive it to the inside, so it's going to rear end him. And we'll take the corner away. That's one way to pass. It's going to come back on me, but I got the inside for the right-hander. Oh, but I blew it. Just drift the car around. It's a very controllable car in slides, quite fun. I'm just going to be a little too far back from the car in front, I think, but try to put as much as I can into it for these final couple of infield corners, down to third gear. Come to the left-hander. Keep it in third gear, try to get some good acceleration out. Two identical cars behind me. They're going to have a heck of a run coming to the line, but I'm going to have to go full block here. Take the draft away from them, run the low line. Hopefully it's just enough to keep me in front. Up to fifth gear. Looks like I'm doing all right so far. We'll come out of the last corner and towards the line. So nowhere close to the front. I don't know what the other car class was doing, but best of the rest, I guess. So I'll do one more race to show off the Sardian Heights circuit and take out something with a little more power this time, the old hammer. Alright, so here we are at the back of the grid. This should be interesting. 5 laps around Sardian Heights. Lights are lit. Out. We're underway. Try to get a good run off the line, but might be a pretty slow first lap. This was absolutely the track I raced the least back in the day. think it was a combination of how difficult the track is and how little space there is, but also the performance difference. There's a lot of objects and things on this one. Very convincingly a city. They went all out with this. A little reminiscent of Seattle in Gran Turismo, but also I got a little bit of the Detroit street circuit in real life. The downtown street circuit, not the Belle Isle track. Oh, so got squeezed here on the inside, just trying to float it through. Definitely elbows out for this. Second gear, try to shove it up the inside as a chicane here. Not really possible. I do have damage on, so I can't be completely reckless. Very difficult when following other cars. I will say this is the only track I had to do a couple practice laps on just to remember how it went, because I raced it so little back in the day. Down to second gear. Long left-hander there. Oh, sweeping downhill. Up to fourth gear. Break into the tunnels. Reminds me of driving through Boston. On the inside, take another position there. I'm gonna have the most scuffed up hammer. Cones all over the track will come out of the dip. The first lap, so quite a twisty lap. Should have a little more speed this lap. Not following a bunch of cars extremely close. Oh, getting tagged from behind just a little bit, so I'm a little slow there. So then come up the inside, down to second gear. Car is not as easy to drive as the Cody was. Could also be a little bit of the front end damage from hitting just about everything on the opening lap. Up to fourth gear, see if I can dive bomb these two guys. There we go. Nice and easy, a lot like a Trans Am feeling type car and race. Oh, slamming the inside door. Come around and dive down. This is such a cool part of the track. I remember trying to race Formula One cars around this track, and that was definitely, everybody loved taking all the crazy cars to crazy circuits. Formula One races at Joesville were very common. So then come around the outside as we'll come back up the hill. There's cones everywhere in the inside of the course, but able to get side by side at least. Try to outbrake them as I come up the hill. Get a good run onto the front straightaway, complete another lap. Yeah, and it definitely had me fooled early on that I thought this might have been a real track somewhere. It certainly put enough detail in it to make that possible, having some real sponsors as well on the outsides of the track. It didn't really matter that it was fictional, and honestly, looking back at it, it's kind of neat to have these well-done fictional tracks when you're so used to racing at all the same places over and over. Give up Monaco for a nice run at Sardian Heights. Alright, try to launch it up the inside. It's a little bit like bumper cars. There's just not enough space to pass here, so if you're going to make a move, you got to force it, which does not lead to great racing online, which is yet another reason why this wasn't the most popular track. Grab another position into the tunnel S, the tunnel that goes nowhere for no reason. Come by the only place on the track that doesn't have barriers on either side. We'll take advantage of it too. Climb up the hill. Actually had a car go in the pits in front, so I'm up to 6th position. Oh, I got tagged from behind there. these smaller cars. I forget which one this is in front of me, but it's definitely quicker than my big old hammer around this track. No better than to throw it up the inside there now. Come out of the corner right on the back. Just a couple more laps to go. See if I can get through a couple more of these guys. Oh no! Well, I totally threw away that one. Outbroke myself trying to get into the top 5. Oh, all the way back to 13th now. Gonna have to really push now to get to the front again. Oh, a car blowing up in front, no way. Oh, he's on fire and everything. That pretty much gave me every one of my positions back now. All right, we'll try to cut through. So I'm back in 6th somehow. After we had the car I was chasing there just blew up going into the tunnel. Come through the final couple of corners. We'll get the white flag this time. But absolute drama here at Sardian Heights. Big implications. We'll come through these long left-handers. Now that the cars are spread out, you can see how much the car is just understeering. I think all the car setups by default are pretty understeery, just to make sure folks can control them. But you definitely want to stiffen some roll bars or do something to get some of it out. It's about good for 5 laps. I don't want to see what it would do to the tires after that. Just working through the S's, though. Just nick the barrier on the left side. A little kiss. Over the top of the hill to see what happened to our friend here past the scene of the crime. See if I can get the 5th this time without throwing it into the barrier. Long left-hander. There we go. So, car's cleaned up, thankfully. Down to 3rd gear. So, come through the final couple of corners. So, got up to 5th. Not enough time to get up to 4th. If I didn't throw it all the way there, 2nd a lap before the end. Could have been possible, maybe, but... whoa. Yeah, it's like a bull in a china shop. It's not a track and car combo, I might suggest, but a really great track overall. Fun one to race, especially I think they came out with a Formula 3 car not too long after the original release, and it was an official rFactor Formula 3 car. And that was the perfect car for a track like this. It was very much like a Macau or Monaco or something. So, an absolute ton of fun racing the default content in rFactor. I know a lot of folks wouldn't even look at it. It might be an instant turnoff to think you would play rFactor and not download a million mods instantly. But for me, it's a lot of nostalgia going back to, and before the days of just instantly knowing everything was out there all the time, or seeing screenshots of mods and then getting the game. I got the game first and didn't really know there was a lot out there. There wasn't even really a lot of mods. So, played this content a lot. I'm sure there's a few others out there that played the stock stuff and tried to buy all the upgrade parts and things, but a lot of fun revisiting. I think at some point in the future, like I said at the start, I'll start taking a look at some of the better mods that were released over the years, because it's truly incredible what some folks are able to build and still build for rFactor. But it really changed the way we think of simulators and paved the way for things like Assetto Corsa and rFactor 2 and all of the other sims out there to have such great dedicated mod teams that create everything that's fun to race on. So I hope you enjoyed this. Much more to come from me, but thank you for watching. I'll see you all again next time.